He divorced her for being barren, but 9 years later she returned not just as a world-renowned surgeon, but as the mother of the triplets he never knew existed. Now his life and his heart are in her hands. Welcome to Mr. Roberts Stories. If you love gripping tales of love, betrayal, revenge, and shocking twists, you've just found your new home. Here, every story will pull you in, make your heart race, and leave you guessing until the very last word. Now here's the deal. Watch till the end because the best surprises are always saved for last. And if you enjoy the story, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment to share your thoughts, and subscribe so you never miss another unforgettable story. Every story on Mr. Roberts Stories isn't just something you watch. It's something you feel, something that stays with you long after the video ends. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's story. Trust me, you're going to want to watch every second. This is Mr. Roberts Stories, where every story is an experience. Dr. Selena Carter's day had begun like any other, reviewing patient charts, consulting with her residents, and moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who had spent a lifetime saving lives. But nothing in her 9 years as a cardiac surgeon could have prepared her for the voice that crackled urgently through the hospital's intercom. Dr. Carter, we need you in or 5 immediately. VIP patient, massive myocardial infarction. Triple bypass required, now. Selena's heart skipped a beat, not from panic, but from a flicker of recognition in the patient's name. Vitals? She asked, already moving toward the surgical wing. Critical but stable. Name is Adrian Blackwell. Geo. Very high profile. The clipboard in her hands suddenly felt impossibly heavy. Adrian Blackwell. 9 years ago, that name had been synonymous with betrayal, heartbreak, and humiliation. The man who had called her barren and unfit for marriage. The man who had ended their life together over something she couldn't control. Selena paused, inhaling deeply. Her fingers tightened around the clipboard. Memories she had tried so hard to bury surged like a tidal wave. The way he had looked at her after the 15th failed pregnancy test, the cold steel in his gray eyes as he told her she couldn't give him what he wanted, and the final words that had shattered her completely. You're defective. I need someone who can give me heirs. The words had echoed through her mind for years, a cruel refrain she thought she had escaped. And now he was lying in a hospital bed, his life in her hands. She shook off the memories and walked briskly down the hall. She was a surgeon first and foremost. Emotions could not interfere with precision. Dr. Carter, are you all right? The voice belonged to Nurse Martinez, her assistant. Selena nodded. I'm fine. Let's prepare for surgery. I need full patient history. The elevator ride felt unbearably long. Her mind raced through everything she knew about Adrian. 42 years old, CEO of one of the largest tech firms in the country, under immense stress, collapsed during a board meeting. Family history included a father who had died of a heart attack at 52 and a grandfather who had undergone bypass surgery at 45. Genetic predisposition? Strong. And yet, 9 years ago, it hadn't been genetic issues that defined their lives. It had been a miscarriage after miscarriage, a failed marriage, and a decision that had torn her world apart. Her thoughts flicked involuntarily to her children, Lila, Ethan, and Micah. 8 years old now, brilliant, beautiful, and entirely unaware of the man lying unconscious in the OR she was about to enter. Adrian had no idea these children existed. He had no idea that she had carried his legacy despite his abandonment. The OR doors opened and the surgical team immediately snapped into action. Selena scrubbed in, her hands steady, her focus razor-sharp. The room was tense, filled with the hum of machines and the sterile smell of antiseptic. Vitals stable. Ready to proceed, the anesthesiologist confirmed. Selena nodded. Begin incision. First bypass, arterial to left anterior descending. Her voice was calm, but inside, emotions warred with professionalism. This was the man who had once held her heart in his hands only to discard it. And now she was stitching together the organ that kept him alive. Hours passed in a blur. Each bypass, each suture, every adjustment she made was precise, deliberate, and perfect. She could feel the irony deep in her bones. The woman he had cast aside as defective was now the only person capable of saving his life. During a brief pause, as she scrubbed out for a moment to rehydrate, Selena allowed herself a single, private thought. The irony of it all was not lost on her. 9 years of heartbreak, struggles, and sleepless nights had led to this moment. She had become more than she ever imagined. A leading surgeon, a single mother to 3 children who bore Adrian's features, and a woman whose strength had been forged in the fire of betrayal. Once the final sutures were complete, Selena stepped back. Vitals are strong. Bypass is functioning perfectly, she announced. Her resident, Dr. Patel, looked up with wide eyes. You saved his life, Dr. Carter. I can't believe it. Selena simply nodded. That's what we do here. We save lives regardless of personal history. Her professional mask slipped briefly as she removed her gloves and mask, catching her reflection in the mirror. The young woman who had left Manhattan 9 years ago, broken and humiliated, was gone. In her place stood someone confident, composed, and formidable. Later, as she moved to the ICU to check on Adrian's postoperative status, Selena nearly collided with a perfectly styled woman whose icy expression radiated authority. Blonde hair glinted under the fluorescent lights, and her designer dress looked like it had been tailored for a queen. You must be the surgeon, the woman said imperiously. I'm Vanessa Blackwell, Adrian's fiancée. I'm carrying his child. Selena's chest tightened, but she kept her expression neutral. I'm Dr. Selena Carter, Mr. Blackwell's surgeon. The procedure was successful. He should make a full recovery. Vanessa's eyes flickered with curiosity, or perhaps recognition, but Selena didn't wait to find out. Her attention shifted to the small waiting area where 3 children sat quietly, Lila, Ethan, and Micah. Adrian's triplets. His blood. His legacy. And he had no idea they existed. Selena knelt before them, her professional demeanor softening. How are my little scholars doing? She asked, brushing a strand of hair from Lila's face. We're waiting for you to finish surgery, Ethan said seriously. Mrs. Chan said we should be patient. Micah, ever thoughtful, looked at her with quiet intelligence. Is Daddy going to be okay? Selena's throat tightened. He's going to be fine. The surgery went perfectly. They smiled faintly, reassured but still innocent of the truth. The father who had abandoned them was recovering just down the hall, completely unaware of their existence. Minutes later, Adrian stirred in the ICU. The first thing he noticed was the beeping of monitors, the sterile hospital smell, and the dull ache in his chest. And then, the voice. Welcome back, Mr. Blackwell. It was calm, steady, professional. But the tone carried weight, history, and the unspoken tension of years of unhealed wounds. Recognition flickered in his gray eyes, but the full truth had not yet reached him. The woman who had been discarded, the mother of children he had never seen, the woman who had just saved his life, was standing there, controlling the very moment that could decide the rest of his future. And as Selena watched him blink awake, every nerve in her body alert, she realized that the collision of past and present had begun. The man who had once torn her world apart was now entirely at her mercy. But more than that, she held something far more powerful than the scalpel in her hand. The secret of his children, the legacy he had lost, and the chance for justice, revenge, or perhaps, forgiveness. Selena stepped back slightly, her eyes meeting his as he struggled to focus. For the first time, Adrian Blackwell was entirely vulnerable. And for the first time he had no control over the outcome. The chapter ended on that suspended note. The man who had once dismissed her as defective now entirely dependent on the woman he had wronged, while the secret of their children loomed quietly in the background, waiting for the moment the truth would finally emerge. Adrian Blackwell's eyes fluttered open, adjusting slowly to the harsh fluorescent lights of the ICU. His chest ached, and the steady beeping of the monitors reminded him that his life had hung by a thread mere hours ago. A haze of confusion and vulnerability settled over him. For the first time in years he felt powerless. Welcome back, Mr. Blackwell, a familiar voice said, steady and professional. Adrian's gray eyes sharpened as he tried to focus. Selena Carter. She was here. The woman he had discarded 9 years ago. The woman he had labeled barren, the woman he had divorced with a coldness he had thought justified. And now, she was standing over him, calm, composed, confident, almost untouchable. He wanted to say something, apologize, demand answers, but the words wouldn't form. The memories of their past flashed through his mind. Her tear-streaked face on the day he left, her pleading voice, the mixture of heartbreak and quiet dignity she had carried even as he turned away. You're awake, Selena said, her tone clinical but not unkind. Vitals are stable. Blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen saturation. All within expected ranges post-surgery. We'll continue monitoring, but the procedure was successful. You're going to recover fully. Adrian swallowed hard. He wanted to speak, but the lump in his throat made it impossible. Why are you here? He finally managed to croak. Selena's expression softened just slightly. Because I'm your surgeon. I save lives. That's my job. Her eyes, however, held something else. An unspoken question, a quiet judgment. The man who had once held her life and discarded her had no idea how different she was now. She wasn't the fragile, hurt woman he remembered. She was formidable, untouchable, and in complete control. Before Adrian could respond, a soft knock at the ICU door interrupted the tense moment. A nurse entered, followed by a young woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and an air of entitlement that screamed wealth. "Dr. Carter?" the blonde said, her tone imperious. "I'm Vanessa Blackwell, Adrian's fiancée. I'm 6 months along. I need updates on his condition." Selena's lips pressed into a thin line. She had been expecting this intrusion but hadn't expected Vanessa to radiate the same confidence she exuded. "Mrs. Blackwell," Selena said evenly, "Adrian's surgery went well. He should recover completely, but he will need rest and close monitoring for the next several weeks. His health takes precedence over everything else." Vanessa frowned, her manicured fingers tightening around the edge of her designer handbag. "I don't understand. He's a CEO. He can't be out of commission for weeks. There are board meetings, contracts, and the upcoming Blackwell Tech Gala. He needs to return to work immediately." Selena raised a brow. "And when his heart fails again because he ignored medical advice? I'll not be responsible for that." Adrian's gaze flicked between the two women. Vanessa's blonde perfection and urgency, and Selena's calm authority. He felt a pang of guilt, confusion, and admiration. He hadn't expected to see Selena like this, commanding, professional, untouchable. She had transformed from the woman he once thought fragile into someone stronger than him in every way. Vanessa's lips tightened. "I understand, but I need to be in control of his schedule. It's my responsibility to manage the family's legacy and ensure continuity." Adrian's chest tightened, not from surgery, but from the realization that Vanessa had fully assumed a role he hadn't even considered. She was not just his fiancée, she had stepped into the empire he had built, almost seamlessly. And yet, standing beside her was the woman he had discarded, the one who had borne children for him that he had never met. Selena's voice cut through the tension like steel. "Mr. Blackwell's recovery isn't about legacy or schedules. It's about his life. Nothing else matters until he is medically cleared to resume his normal activities. I will determine when he is fit to return. That is my professional responsibility." Vanessa's eyes narrowed, and she shot Adrian a glance that seemed to demand obedience. But Adrian found himself unable to speak. The words were stuck somewhere between shame, confusion, and the realization of what he had lost. Selena leaned closer to Adrian's bedside. Her presence was commanding, but there was also a faint, tender undercurrent that she could not completely hide. "You're lucky," she said softly, almost to herself. "Not everyone gets a second chance at life." The words hung in the room, heavy with unspoken meaning. Adrian's mind reeled. Did she mean the surgery, or something else entirely? The seconds stretched, each one filled with memories, regrets, and possibilities. As the tension simmered, 3 small voices echoed from the hallway outside. Adrian's heart skipped a beat, though he had no way of knowing why. Selena's pupils tightened. She had promised herself for years she would protect the children until the right moment. And now that moment was near. Through the ICU window, he saw them. 3 children waiting quietly, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Lila, the eldest, her curls bouncing as she tried to maintain composure. Ethan, precise and logical, already assessing the room as if analyzing a case. And Micah, the quiet, thoughtful one, whose intelligence mirrored Adrian's own, tempered by Selena's empathy. Adrian's eyes widened. He didn't recognize them, couldn't yet, but something deep in his chest stirred. A strange pull, an instinct, a recognition he didn't understand. The children he had never met were here waiting. His heart, already fragile from surgery, clenched at the mere thought. Selena knelt by their side briefly, brushing a stray lock of hair from Lila's face. "How are my little scholars?" she asked, her tone gentle. "You've been patient waiting for me?" Ethan, always precise, responded immediately. "Mrs. Chan said we should wait quietly while you finish surgery. You're done now." "Yes," Selena said softly. "Everything went perfectly. Your father, he's going to be fine." Micah's eyes were wide. "He doesn't know we're here?" Selena shook her head, her lips tight. "Not yet. But it's for the best. He needs to recover fully before anyone talks about family matters." From the doorway, Vanessa's eyes widened as she noticed the children for the first time. Her perfectly manicured hands trembled slightly as she gasped. Who are they?" Selena's lips curved in a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Your stepchildren, I suppose, though you haven't met them yet." They'll be staying with me until their father is ready. Vanessa's face paled, her composure cracking for the first time. Adrian's unconscious body in the ICU seemed to loom larger than ever, a stark reminder that life had handed Selena the ultimate advantage. She had not only saved his life but also protected the secret of the children he had abandoned. Adrian stirred slightly, his eyelids fluttering. Selena straightened. The moment had arrived when past, present, and future collided in the sterile white of the ICU. He didn't yet know the truth of the children in the hallway, the life he had missed, or the strength Selena now wielded. But he would find out. And when he did, everything, his control, his ego, his assumptions about family, would be challenged. Selena stepped back, her eyes never leaving Adrian as she whispered quietly to herself, "You had your chance, Adrian Blackwell. But now, it's my turn." The room fell into a tense silence, punctuated only by the steady beeping of the monitors, the faint shuffle of nurses' feet, and the quiet, determined breathing of a woman who had not only saved a life but was poised to reclaim the legacy of the children she loved more than anything. Outside, the children waited, unaware of the storm about to hit, while Vanessa struggled to regain control, and Adrian, weak but alive, slowly began to awaken, not just to the reality of surgery, but to the consequences of the choices he had made 9 years ago. Adrian Blackwell blinked, disoriented. The white ceiling of the ICU and the constant beeping of machines reminded him he was alive, but fragile. His chest ached, a dull, insistent pain that reminded him he was no longer invincible. Selena Carter stood at his bedside, reviewing the charts with calm authority. Her dark eyes flicked toward him briefly, assessing, not with warmth, but with the sharp precision of someone who had mastered both life and loss. Adrian's gaze locked with hers, searching for familiarity, for answers. But all he found was professionalism tempered with something he couldn't name, a quiet power, an undeniable presence. "Good morning, Mr. Blackwell," Selena said softly. "You're awake. That's excellent. How are you feeling?" Adrian's lips parted, but no words came. He wanted to speak, to apologize, to demand explanations, but the lump in his throat and the aftermath of surgery rendered him nearly mute. "You're lucky," Selena continued, almost to herself. "Not everyone gets a second chance at life." The words resonated in his chest. Adrian's mind raced. Did she mean the surgery, or something else entirely? Memories of 9 years ago surfaced. The divorce papers she had signed reluctantly, the anger he had expected her to feel, the tears he had ignored. He remembered calling her barren, calling her defective, and leaving her alone to pick up the pieces of a life he no longer wanted. And now, she was here. Alive, commanding, controlling the room, and him. Vanessa Blackwell appeared at the doorway, her perfectly polished blonde hair gleaming under the fluorescent lights. She looked every bit the society queen she had become over the past 9 years, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her expression as she noticed the scene before her. "Dr. Carter," Vanessa said, voice sharp, almost brittle. "I need to know how Adrian is. How long until he can resume his schedule?" Selena didn't glance at her. "Mr. Blackwell's recovery is not about schedules, events, or galas. It's about his life. He will resume normal activities when his body allows. That will be determined by medical necessity, not social obligations." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "I manage his affairs. The family legacy." "Your role does not include overriding medical decisions," Selena interrupted, her tone firm. "His life comes first. Always." Adrian tried to speak but only croaked out a rasping, Selena?" Selena froze. His voice, weak and strained, carried the faintest hint of recognition. She met his gaze evenly, her expression calm but unreadable. "Yes, Adrian. It's me." His gray eyes widened in disbelief. You're here?" "Yes," she said simply. "I'm here to ensure you live." The words hit him harder than any insult or betrayal he had ever suffered. He had discarded her 9 years ago, thought he had ended any connection between them, and yet she was here, controlling his very survival. Before he could absorb the weight of her presence, the soft shuffle of footsteps outside the ICU drew his attention. 3 children appeared, quietly peering through the glass partition. Adrian blinked, confusion swirling in his head. Who were they? He didn't recognize them, yet something in the back of his mind stirred, an inexplicable tug at his heart. Selena noticed the children instantly, Lila, Ethan, and Micah. Her breath caught for a fraction of a second, a private pang of love and protectiveness that she swiftly masked behind her professional demeanor. She had promised herself for years that Adrian would not know about them until the right moment. And now that moment had almost arrived. "Mommy?" Lila whispered, her voice carrying a mix of excitement and concern. Selena crouched slightly, meeting their gaze. I need you to be patient for just a little while longer, she said softly. Your father is waking up. He's going to be very confused. But you're very brave waiting here quietly. Ethan adjusted his posture, the seriousness in his eyes reminiscent of Adrian himself. We'll be patient, he said. We understand. Micah, the thoughtful one, added quietly, is he going to be okay? Yes, Selena reassured them, though her heart clenched. Everything went perfectly. He will recover fully, thanks to the surgery. Adrian's eyes flicked toward the children. There was something hauntingly familiar about them. The gray eyes, the subtle arch of the eyebrows, the stubborn set of the chin. His chest tightened painfully. He had never met them before, yet they seemed familiar. Uncannily so. Vanessa stepped closer, her face paling as she noticed the children. Who are they? She demanded, her voice laced with alarm and indignation. Selena straightened, her calmness unwavering. They are your stepchildren, she said deliberately, allowing the words to hang in the air, heavy with meaning. You haven't met them yet. They'll remain here with me until Adrian is ready to understand the full picture. Vanessa's perfectly polished exterior faltered for the first time. Her breath hitched and she blinked rapidly, trying to regain composure. Stepchildren? From when? Selena's lips curved into a faint, unreadable smile. 9 years ago, she said softly. Before you remarried. They are your blood, Adrian, even if you've never known it. Adrian's heart raced. Blood? His children? The revelation hit him like a thunderclap. His mind reeled, unable to process the emotions crashing through him. Guilt, wonder, disbelief, awe, and a faint glimmer of hope. The children he had thought he would never have were alive, thriving, and here in this hospital just outside his reach. He wanted to speak, to ask questions, to demand explanations, but his voice failed him. Selena noticed his struggle and placed a steady hand on his arm. Rest, she said firmly. You'll have time for questions. But for now, you need to recover. Adrian's gaze flicked to Vanessa, whose face was pale and controlled by a mixture of fear and fury. He realized suddenly that she had assumed his life and legacy without ever knowing the full truth. And that Selena Carter, was holding all the cards. Not just in the hospital, not just in the lives of the children, but in the balance of everything he had once thought he controlled. Minutes stretched into an eternity as Adrian struggled to comprehend the situation. His life had been rebuilt around plans, schedules, and legacies, but Selena had rewritten the rules. She had been gone, yet here she was, stronger, untouchable, and silently holding the truth of his family in her hands. The first tear slipped from his eye, unbidden. He had never cried for himself before, never admitted weakness. But now, faced with the consequences of choices he had made 9 years ago, he realized how much he had lost. The life he had taken for granted, the woman who had loved him despite everything, the children who bore his blood, was here, waiting silently for him to earn their trust. Selena stepped back slightly, allowing Adrian the space to adjust to the weight of what he was seeing, what he was feeling. She knew the moment he understood would come, and when it did, there would be no turning back. The past, present, and future were colliding, and he would have to navigate them carefully. The storm of emotions had begun. Guilt, regret, love, curiosity, and perhaps the faintest whisper of hope danced in the air around the ICU. Adrian had been given a second chance at life, but he had yet to learn whether he could earn a second chance at the family he had abandoned. And Selena was ready to see if he was worthy. The sun filtered weakly through the blinds of Adrian's private hospital room, casting pale stripes of light across the crisp white sheets. He stirred, his body weak but his mind painfully alive. The revelation of the children, their eyes, their faces, their uncanny resemblance, echoed in his head like a haunting melody he couldn't escape. They were his. He knew it in his bones. His blood flowed through them, his legacy stood outside that door. And yet, he had never known them, never even held them as infants, never heard their first words or their laughter. Selena's words from the night before echoed in his ears. They are your blood, Adrian, even if you've never known it. The door creaked open, breaking his turbulent thoughts. Selena entered, a tablet in one hand, her stethoscope slung effortlessly around her neck. She looked immaculate, untouchable. Every line of her body spoke of control over herself, over the room, and over the fragile man in the bed. Adrian swallowed, his voice still hoarse. Selena. Her gaze flicked to him, steady, unreadable. You should be resting. I need to know. His chest rose and fell unevenly. Those children. They're mine, aren't they? The silence that followed was deafening. The beeping of the monitor seemed louder, harsher, underscoring the weight of her hesitation. Finally, Selena placed the tablet on the bedside table and folded her arms across her chest. Yes, she said simply. They're yours. Adrian's breath caught. The confirmation hit him harder than the surgery ever had. His children. His flesh and blood. The 3 lives he had abandoned without even knowing they existed. I thought you couldn't, his voice cracked. The doctors told me you couldn't. Selena's lips curved into a faint, bitter smile. Yes, that's what you believed. What you clung to when you wanted a reason to walk away. But life has a cruel sense of irony, Adrian. A year after you left, I discovered I was pregnant. With triplets. Adrian's hands trembled against the sheets. His gray eyes brimmed with emotions he could not name. Why didn't you tell me? Tell you? Selena's laugh was soft, humorless. You had already decided I was broken, Adrian. You had filed the divorce papers, thrown me away like I was defective merchandise. Tell me, what would you have done if I'd called you then? Would you have cared? Or would you have accused me of lying to trap you? The words sliced through him like knives. Deep down he knew she was right. The man he had been 9 years ago would have doubted her, maybe even despised her for it. He had been so consumed by his own ego, his own hunger for perfection, that he had left no room for her truth. I was wrong, Adrian whispered, the weight of regret pressing down on his chest. I was blind. Selena's eyes softened for a brief moment before she steeled herself again. It doesn't matter anymore. What's done is done. I raised them on my own. They are mine. Mine too, Adrian countered weakly, but there was steel in his tone. Selena's gaze darkened. No. Biology may tie you to them, but fatherhood? That title belongs to someone who shows up. Someone who sacrifices. Someone who protects and nurtures. You were absent. You forfeited that right when you walked away. Her words cut him to the core, but he didn't flinch. He deserved every accusation, every ounce of her fury. Yet, something within him stirred, a determination he hadn't felt in years. I want to meet them, he said firmly. Selena's lips pressed into a tight line. You're in no condition. I want to meet my children, Adrian repeated, his voice firmer this time, carrying the weight of desperation. Before Selena could respond, the door burst open and Vanessa swept into the room. Her blonde hair glistened under the morning light, her designer heels clicking against the tiled floor. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who believed the world revolved around her. And for years, Adrian had allowed her to think so. What is going on here? She demanded, her voice sharp. Who are those children, Adrian? And why is she? Vanessa's eyes darted to Selena, filled with venom. Why is she claiming they're yours? Selena's expression remained calm, unshaken. Because it's the truth. Vanessa's laugh was sharp, brittle. This is absurd. 9 years, Adrian. We've built a life together. A company. A future. And now suddenly she reappears with 3 conveniently timed children and claims they're yours? How do we know she's not lying? Adrian's chest tightened. He looked from Vanessa to Selena, torn between the woman who had stood by his side in recent years and the one he had cast aside, who now held the truth of his bloodline. Selena arched a brow. Lying? If you're so certain, then let's arrange a DNA test. I have nothing to hide. The confidence in her voice silenced the room. Vanessa's face paled, her mask of composure cracking. She hadn't expected Selena to meet her challenge so directly, so fearlessly. Adrian, however, didn't need a test. His heart, his instincts, his very blood told him the truth. The moment he had seen those children, something inside him had shifted. They were his. He knew it. Vanessa, Adrian said quietly, his voice weak but steady. They're mine. I can feel it. Vanessa staggered back as if slapped. No, she whispered. No, Adrian. We have a family. I'm carrying your child. You can't let her come in here and destroy everything we've built. Selena's eyes flicked to Vanessa's swollen belly, then back to Adrian. Her lips curved into a faint, unreadable smile. Then perhaps it's time you ask yourself, Adrian, which family truly matters to you? The room went still. The machines beeped steadily, but the tension in the air was suffocating. Adrian's entire world was unraveling. His fiancée's panic, his ex-wife's quiet strength, and the existence of children he had never known. For the first time in years he had no control. No boardroom authority, no commanding presence. Just a man stripped bare by truth and regret. Adrian's voice trembled as he whispered, almost to himself, I want to see them. Please, Selena. Bring them to me. Selena studied him carefully, her expression a mixture of caution and hidden longing. She had shielded those children from pain, from rejection, from his absence. Could she risk exposing them now? Could she trust him not to hurt them again? Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she nodded once. Very well. But understand this, Adrian, if you so much as falter, if you so much as hurt them with your words or actions, I will take them away and you will never see them again. As Selena turned toward the door, Vanessa's hand shot out, gripping Adrian's arm. Her blue eyes were wild, desperate. Adrian, you can't do this. Don't let her manipulate you. Don't throw us away for ghosts from the past. Adrian met her gaze, and for the first time in years he saw through the facade. Vanessa wasn't fighting for him, she was fighting for the empire, for the status, for the control his name had given her. Selena, however, was fighting for something far more powerful: truth, legacy, and love. I need to see them, Adrian whispered again, pulling his arm free. Selena opened the door, her heart pounding. The children stood just outside, waiting patiently. She extended her hand, and Lila, Ethan, and Micah stepped forward cautiously, their wide eyes curious and uncertain. Adrian's breath caught in his throat as the three entered the room. His heart, fragile yet stubborn, beat wildly as he looked at the faces of the children he had lost 9 years ago. Tears welled in his eyes, spilling freely for the first time in his life. He reached out a trembling hand, his voice breaking. My children. And in that single moment, the walls of arrogance, pride, and power crumbled. Adrian Blackwell, the untouchable billionaire, was reduced to what he had always secretly longed to be: a father. But whether Selena, and the children, would allow him to earn that title was yet to be seen. Adrian's gaze shifted between the three children standing cautiously in his hospital room. Lila clutched her small backpack straps, her brown eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Ethan stood tall, his posture stiff, analyzing every inch of the sterile environment, while Micah lingered slightly behind, his hands folded nervously, watching his older siblings and Adrian with quiet intelligence. Selena stood slightly back, letting the moment breathe, but her eyes never left the scene. This was a test, a first step. Adrian had been absent for 9 years, but she wanted to see how he would approach this fragile connection. One wrong move, one selfish word, and everything would collapse. Adrian swallowed hard. His voice trembled as he spoke, hoarse from surgery and emotion. I don't know what to say. Lila tilted her head slightly, a small frown creasing her forehead. You're supposed to be our dad. You should know what to say. Adrian winced. The bluntness in her voice, so familiar in its honesty, hit him like a tidal wave. 9 years of absence could not erase the truth. They knew him instinctively. I just need time, he murmured. I've missed so much. I don't even know where to start. Ethan stepped forward, arms crossed, his analytical mind already at work. Start by telling us why you weren't there, he said calmly, almost accusingly. Why didn't you care? Adrian's chest tightened. There was no excuse that could cover the mistakes he had made, no words that could undo 9 years of absence. He swallowed again, trying to steady his shaking hands. I was wrong, he admitted, voice breaking. I thought I was doing what was best at the time, but I see now. I failed you. I failed all of you. Micah finally moved forward, his gentle eyes softening the tense room. We didn't know you, he said quietly, but we always wondered. We always hoped. Adrian felt the weight of those words crush him, and tears slipped freely down his cheeks. For the first time in his life he was powerless before truth, emotion, and love. I've missed everything, he whispered. Every first step, every birthday, every little moment. I wasn't there. But I want to be. If you'll let me, I want to try. Lila's lower lip trembled slightly. She glanced at Selena, seeking guidance. Selena's nod was subtle but firm. You can try, she said softly, giving Adrian the chance he had long deserved, but also the responsibility to prove himself. The children moved closer cautiously, like tentative seedlings reaching for sunlight after a long winter. Lila took the first step, holding out her small hand. I guess we can try, she said softly. Adrian's heart swelled. He grasped her hand gently, careful not to scare her, and gave a small, shaky smile. Thank you, he whispered. Ethan followed, standing slightly taller. He extended his hand with a serious, formal gesture, almost like a negotiation. I'll watch you carefully, he said, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Adrian chuckled softly, despite the lump in his throat. I understand. And I'll do my best to earn your trust. Micah, the most reserved of the three, finally stepped forward and offered a tentative hug. Adrian's arms went around him instinctively, holding the child close, inhaling the faint scent of the boy's shampoo and clothes. For the first time he felt the warmth of family, the quiet strength of what he had lost and now had the chance to reclaim. Selena watched silently, her chest tightening with a mixture of hope and fear. This was the beginning of something fragile and beautiful, a father reconnecting with children who had been denied his presence, a family rebuilding from fragments. But she also knew the road ahead would not be easy. As the moment settled, the door opened abruptly and Vanessa's sharp voice sliced through the calm. "Adrian, what's going on in here?" Vanessa's eyes widened as she saw the children standing around him, her perfectly polished mask cracking. Her blonde hair seemed almost aggressive in the sunlight streaming through the blinds. "Who are they?" she demanded. Adrian stood slowly, supporting himself on the bed's railing. He looked at Vanessa with a quiet, newfound strength. "They are my children," he said firmly, his voice resonant despite his weakness. Vanessa staggered back, disbelief written across her face. "What? That's impossible. You can't, how could this happen? 9 years? This is ridiculous." Selena stepped forward, her expression icy. "It's not ridiculous. It's the truth. They are Adrian's children. Born after the divorce while he believed he had no heirs. I raised them alone." Vanessa's hands trembled and her composure finally cracked. You can't just show up and take them," she screamed. "I'm carrying your child, Adrian. We have a life, a future, a legacy. You can't just erase all of that." Adrian's chest ached with guilt and exhaustion, but he stood taller. "No, Vanessa," he said slowly, deliberately. "I'm not erasing anything. But these children are mine too. And I will not ignore them again. I cannot, and I will not, repeat the mistakes of the past." Vanessa's face turned pale and she bit her lip, her fingers curling into fists. You can't just—" "You're right," Selena interjected sharply. "He can't. And he won't. But he can try. And the choice of whether he gets to be a father to them, whether he earns their trust, is entirely up to them. Not you. Not me. Them." Vanessa staggered back, momentarily silenced by Selena's authority. Her eyes flicked from Adrian to the children, and then to Selena, her jaw tightening in rage and disbelief. She realized, perhaps too late, that she was facing a woman who had mastered the art of strength, patience, and truth. A woman who had saved Adrian's life, protected her children, and now, quietly, held the upper hand. Adrian looked down at Lila, Ethan, and Micah. "I know I don't deserve your trust," he said softly. "But I want to try. I want to be your father. And I will do whatever it takes to earn that." Lila stepped closer, her hand still in his, and smiled faintly. "We'll see," she said softly. Ethan nodded, his serious face softening slightly. "We'll give you a chance," he said firmly. Micah whispered almost shyly, "We want to see if you really mean it." Adrian's heart swelled with emotion. For the first time in 9 years he felt a sense of purpose beyond wealth, power, and ego. He had been given a second chance, not just at life but at family. Selena's eyes glimmered as she watched the first tentative connections form between father and children. There would be challenges, heartache, and setbacks, she knew. But this was a beginning. Vanessa, however, was not done. She stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her, leaving behind a tension that lingered in the sterile hospital air. Selena turned to Adrian, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "You will have challenges," she said softly. "She will not give up easily. But you must focus on these children. They are your family. Everything else is secondary." Adrian nodded, taking a deep, shaky breath. "I understand. And I won't fail them again. I promise." For the first time in years he felt hope. The storm of the past was not over, but he had been given a compass, a chance to navigate it with love, truth, and responsibility. And he would not squander it, not this time. 2 years had passed since that fateful day in the ICU when Adrian Blackwell first met the children he never knew he had. The once stern CO had changed in ways that money, power, and status could never teach him. He had learned patience, humility, and the quiet, steady love of a father finally present in his children's lives. The Blackwell estate was alive with laughter. Lila, now 10, painted vivid murals across the sunroom walls, her creativity a blend of Selena's artistic spirit and Adrian's boldness. Ethan, serious yet thoughtful, had developed an interest in robotics, spending hours building and programming intricate machines that left the adults in awe. And Micah, gentle and observant, was an avid reader, often found curled in the library with his nose buried in stories that took him worlds away. Adrian stood at the doorway watching them with a soft smile. Selena appeared beside him, her hands slipping into his naturally. They didn't need words. Their connection was built on years of shared trials, triumphs, and quiet understanding. He had earned her trust, and she had allowed him to reclaim a place in his children's lives, not through obligation but because he had shown himself worthy. "Dad." Lila's voice rang out, breaking his reverie. She dashed toward him, a paintbrush in one hand and a smudge of green paint across her cheek. Adrian bent down, scooping her into his arms. "Hey, my little artist. How's my favorite masterpiece?" She giggled, pressing her tiny hands against his face. "Better than yours, obviously." Ethan approached, his mechanical creation clutched carefully in both hands. "Dad, look. I finally finished the robot you helped me design last week." Adrian took the robot, turning it over in his hands. "Incredible," he said, pride swelling in his chest. "You're brilliant, Ethan. Just like your mother." Micah, quieter as always, approached with a book in hand. "Dad." "Selena. I think you should read this with me," he whispered, his voice soft but insistent. Selena knelt beside him, taking the book gently. "Of course, sweetheart. Let's read it together." Adrian watched as his family moved around him, their laughter and warmth filling every corner of the estate. For so long he had chased wealth and status, thinking they would fill the void inside him. But it had been the children, and Selena, who completed him, who gave his life purpose beyond the boardroom. Later that evening, Adrian and Selena stood on the balcony, the city lights shimmering below. The soft hum of the evening was punctuated by the distant laughter of their children playing in the garden. "You've changed him," Selena said softly, her gaze fixed on Adrian. "He's not the same man he was 9 years ago." Adrian turned to her, his expression earnest. "I wouldn't be who I am without you. Without them. You saved me long before the surgery ever did. You've given me a second chance at life, and at love." Selena's lips curved into a smile, one that carried the weight of all the struggles they had endured together. "And you've earned it, Adrian. Every single day you've proven that you're willing to fight for them, for us." Adrian took her hand, holding it gently. "I don't want to make the same mistakes again. I want to be present. I want to be worthy. Not just as a father but as your partner. For the rest of our lives." Selena's eyes softened. "Then prove it," she whispered, leaning into him, letting the quiet warmth of the evening and the life they had built together envelop them. As they stood there, hand in hand, the past felt distant, a shadow that no longer held power over them. The years of pain, betrayal, and heartbreak had shaped them, but they had not defined them. Instead, love, patience, and second chances had created something stronger, a family that could weather anything. Lila, Ethan, and Micah ran up to the balcony, breathless and excited. "Dad, Mom, come see what we made." Adrian laughed, feeling a lightness in his chest that had been absent for nearly a decade. "We're coming," he called, his voice carrying the joy of a man who had finally found his place in the world. Selena wrapped an arm around him as they followed the children into the glow of the family room. The house was alive, not with luxury or status, but with the simple, profound beauty of love returned, trust rebuilt, and lives mended. And for Adrian Blackwell, Selena Carter, and their 3 extraordinary children, the future was no longer uncertain. It was theirs to live, together, full of hope, laughter, and the quiet certainty that some second chances were meant to last forever. The past had tested them. Fate had challenged them. But love, patience, and redemption had won. And in that victory they found home.